Many gardeners waste precious time, money, and garden space growing crops that simply are not worth the effort. Whether it is vegetables that take forever to mature, plants that require constant babying, or crops you can buy cheaply at any grocery store, some things just do not make sense for the home garden. After 3 decades of growing my own food, I have learned these lessons the hard way, so you do not have to. Today, I am sharing 15 crops you should think twice about before planting because they might leave you frustrated, disappointed, or wondering why you bothered in the first place. Stick around for number 12, which surprises most gardeners who assume it is an easy crop. And I have a bonus tip at the end that will help you make smarter planting decisions for years to come. The first crop that often disappoints home gardeners is celery. Now, I know celery seems like it should be simple, since it is just a bunch of stalks. But this vegetable is one of the most demanding crops you can attempt. Celery requires an incredibly long growing season of 100 to 130 days from seed to harvest, and during that entire time, it demands absolutely perfect conditions. The seeds themselves are tiny and notoriously difficult to germinate, requiring light, consistent moisture, and temperatures around 70 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 to 3 weeks before you see any sprouts. Once seedlings emerge, they grow painfully slowly and resent any disturbance to their roots. Transplanting must be done with extreme care, or plants will bolt or produce tough, bitter stalks. Throughout the growing season, celery demands constantly moist soil, which means daily watering during dry spells and careful attention to prevent both drought stress and waterlogging. Any inconsistency results in hollow, stringy, unpleasantly bitter stalks that bear no resemblance to the crisp, mild celery you buy at the store. Celery is also a heavy feeder that requires rich soil and regular fertilization to produce decent-sized stalks. Pest and disease pressure can be significant, with aphids, leaf miners, and various blights ready to attack stressed plants. After all this effort, you harvest a single bunch of celery that costs about $2 at any grocery store year-round. The math simply does not work for most home gardeners. Unless you have ideal growing conditions, plenty of time for babying plants, and a deep love for extremely fresh celery, your garden space is almost certainly better devoted to crops that offer greater rewards for less effort. The second crop that rarely makes sense for home gardens is artichokes in most climate zones. These stunning thistle relatives produce incredible edible flower buds that are a genuine delicacy, but they are extremely particular about where they will grow successfully. Artichokes are perennial plants native to the Mediterranean that thrive in mild coastal climates with cool, foggy summers and mild winters. They perform beautifully in parts of California, particularly the Monterey Bay area where Castroville calls itself the artichoke capital of the world. However, for gardeners in the rest of the country, artichokes present serious challenges. In hot summer regions, artichokes stop producing once temperatures regularly exceed 80 degrees Fahrenheit and often die back entirely during intense heat. In cold winter areas, these tender perennials rarely survive temperatures below 20 degrees without elaborate winter protection, and even then success is hit or miss. You can grow artichokes as annuals in zone 6 and colder by starting seeds very early indoors and vernalizing them in the refrigerator to trigger bud production the first year, but this is a complicated process that often fails. Each artichoke plant requires enormous space, at least 4 feet in diameter, and produces only a handful of edible buds per season. When you consider that, you can buy artichokes at the grocery store for a few dollars each and they are available nearly year-round. The return on investment for home growing is poor for most gardeners. If you live in zones 8 through 10 with mild summers, artichokes can be a worthwhile perennial investment. Everyone else should probably admire them at the farmer's market instead. The third crop I recommend skipping is head lettuce, particularly iceberg and other crisphead types. Before you protest, let me explain the distinction between head lettuce and leaf lettuce. Loose leaf lettuce varieties are among the easiest and most rewarding crops any gardener can grow. Maturing in just 40 to 50 days and tolerating cut and come again, harvesting for extended production. Head lettuce is an entirely different beast. Crisphead varieties like iceberg require 70 to 100 days to mature and demand consistently cool temperatures throughout that entire period. Any heat stress causes the heads to bolt, turning bitter and sending up flower stalks, before forming tight, crisp heads. Head lettuce also requires much more precise spacing, watering, and fertility than leaf types. After all this effort and attention, you harvest a single head of lettuce with relatively little nutritional value compared to darker, leafy greens. Iceberg lettuce is famously nutrient poor, consisting mostly of water and providing minimal vitamins, minerals, or fiber compared to romaine, butterhead, or leaf lettuces. Meanwhile, grocery stores sell iceberg lettuce for about $2 a head year-round, and the quality is remarkably consistent because commercial growers have perfected production in ideal climates. Your garden space would be far better devoted to nutrient-dense leaf lettuces, spinach, kale, or other greens that offer superior nutrition, easier cultivation, and extended harvests from each plant. Now, if you are finding this video helpful so far, I want to share something special with you. I have put together a free newsletter where I share my best gardening tips, seasonal reminders, and advice you will not find anywhere else. If you struggle with knowing what to plant and when, growing specific crops successfully, or maximizing space in small gardens, this newsletter was made for you. Just click the link in the description to join for free. All right, let us continue. The fourth crop that wastes most gardeners' time and money is sweet corn. I can already hear the objections because fresh-picked sweet corn is undeniably one of summer's greatest pleasures, far superior to anything from a store. The problem is that corn demands enormous resources for a very small payoff. Each corn stalk produces only 1 or 2 ears, and you need a minimum block of at least 4 rows with at least 4 plants each for adequate wind pollination. That means dedicating at least 64 square feet of prime garden real estate to produce perhaps 30 ears of corn if everything goes perfectly. Corn is also one of the heaviest feeding crops. You can grow, depleting soil nitrogen at an alarming rate and requiring significant fertilization. It needs consistent deep watering throughout the growing season, and any stress during tasseling and silking results in poorly filled ears with missing kernels. Pest pressure is relentless, with corn earworms, European corn borers, raccoons, and birds all eager to destroy your harvest just when ears reach perfection. For gardeners with limited space, the math is devastating. That same 64 square feet could produce hundreds of pounds of tomatoes, squash, beans, and other vegetables over the course of a season. Unless you have abundant space, perfect growing conditions, and effective pest management strategies, sweet corn is a luxury that most home gardeners cannot afford. Buy it from local farmers who have the acreage and equipment to grow it efficiently, and use your precious garden space for crops with better returns. The fifth crop that often disappoints is peanuts for gardeners, outside the deep south. These legumes require a very long, hot-growing season of 120 to 150 days, with consistently warm soil temperatures. Peanuts need loose, sandy soil with excellent drainage, because the pegs, which are the stems that grow downward after flowering to form peanuts underground, cannot penetrate heavy clay soils. Most of the country simply cannot provide the 4 to 5 months of hot weather peanuts demand. Even gardeners who manage to grow plants often harvest tiny, underdeveloped nuts that hardly seem worth the effort. After harvesting, peanuts require careful curing and drying before they are edible. The yield from a home garden planting is typically just a few handfuls of peanuts after months of waiting. When you can buy a jar of high-quality peanuts for a few dollars, growing your own makes little sense unless you live in zones 8 through 10 with sandy soil and you simply enjoy the novelty. There are far more productive legumes, for most gardens, including bush beans, pole beans, and cowpeas, that mature faster and yield more abundantly. The sixth crop to reconsider is Brussels sprouts for gardeners in hot summer climates. These miniature cabbages are wonderful vegetables, but they require very specific conditions to produce well. Brussels sprouts need a long growing season of 90 to 180 days depending on variety, and they absolutely must mature during cool weather. The sprouts develop along the stalk from the bottom up, and this process happens best when temperatures are consistently below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot weather produces loose, bitter, unpleasant sprouts that bear little resemblance to the sweet, nutty morsels you get from fall-harvested plants that have experienced frost. For gardeners in zones 8 through 10 with hot summers, this creates an almost impossible situation. Spring-planted Brussels sprouts mature during summer heat and produce terrible quality. Fall. Planning for winter harvest can work in mild winter areas, but the timing window is narrow and unpredictable. Northern gardeners in zones 3 through 6 can grow excellent Brussels sprouts by starting plants in spring for fall harvest, timing maturity for after first frost. If you cannot provide cool maturing conditions, skip Brussels sprouts and grow broccoli or cabbage instead, which are more forgiving of temperature fluctuations. The seventh crop that rarely delivers value is melons for gardeners with short growing seasons. Watermelons and cantaloupes need 80 to 100 days of consistently hot weather to produce sweet, fully ripened fruit. In zones 3 through 5, the growing season is simply too short and cool for melons to perform well without significant season extension efforts, like black plastic mulch, row covers, and wall of water protectors. Even with these aids, fruit often fails to ripen fully before frost, resulting in bland, watery, disappointing melons. The plants themselves are large, sprawling vines that occupy enormous garden space, 40 square feet or more per plant for watermelons. When you consider that grocery stores sell perfectly ripe melons for a few dollars during summer, and that local farmers in warmer regions grow them far more efficiently than you can in a marginal climate, the argument for home melon production weakens considerably. Gardeners in zones 6 through 10 with long, hot summers can absolutely grow fantastic melons. Everyone else should honestly evaluate whether the space, effort, and likely disappointing results are worth it. The eighth crop to think carefully about is cauliflower. This beautiful brassica is notoriously one of the most difficult vegetables for home gardeners to grow successfully. Cauliflower demands absolutely perfect conditions throughout its entire life cycle and responds to any stress by producing tiny, discolored, bitter, or loose heads that look nothing like the pristine white globes at the grocery store. Temperature fluctuations are cauliflower's nemesis. Plants exposed to temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit when young may button, forming tiny premature heads that never develop properly. Hot weather above 80 degrees causes heads to become loose, ricey textured, and strong flavored. Inconsistent watering leads to similar problems. Cauliflower also requires blanching for white varieties, which means tying leaves over the developing head to prevent yellowing from sun exposure, adding another task to an already demanding crop. After all this careful attention, you harvest a single head of cauliflower worth about $3 or $4 at the store. Experienced gardeners with reliable cool weather conditions can grow beautiful cauliflower. Beginning gardeners and those in challenging climates should start with forgiving brassicas like broccoli, cabbage, or kale before attempting cauliflower. The ninth crop that wastes garden resources is onions from seed in most situations. Growing onions from seed requires starting indoors 10 to 12 weeks before transplanting, careful attention to day length sensitivity when choosing varieties, and a very long growing season. The tiny seedlings are slow growing, prone to damping off, and require consistent moisture and perfect timing. Meanwhile, onion sets and transplants are inexpensive, widely available, and give you a tremendous head start. Sets, which are small dormant bulbs, can go directly in the ground and mature weeks faster than seed-grown plants. Transplants, which are young seedlings sold in bunches, establish quickly and produce excellent bulbs with far less effort than starting from seed yourself. The only compelling reason to grow onions from seed is access to unusual varieties not available as sets or transplants. and even then, many specialty varieties are increasingly available in transplant form. For most gardeners, buying onion sets or transplants saves months of work with equal or better results. The 10th crop that disappoints many gardeners is ginger in most of the United States. This tropical rhizome requires 8 to 10 months of warm, humid growing conditions to produce a worthwhile harvest. Ginger cannot tolerate any frost and grows best when temperatures stay consistently between 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity. In most of the country, this means growing ginger exclusively as a container plant that must be brought indoors for a significant portion of the year. Even then, the harvests from homegrown ginger are typically small, and the effort required is substantial. Grocery stores sell fresh ginger year-round for very reasonable prices, making home cultivation a hobby rather than a practical food production strategy. Gardeners in zones 9 through 11 with humid conditions can grow ginger outdoors successfully. Everyone else should probably purchase this ingredient unless they simply enjoy the challenge of tropical plant. Cultivation. The 11th crop to reconsider is heirloom tomatoes for gardeners prioritizing yield and reliability. Now let me be clear, I love heirloom tomatoes. Varieties like Brandywine, Cherokee Purple, and Black Krim offer flavors that far surpass any hybrid. However, heirloom tomatoes come with significant drawbacks that every gardener should understand before devoting their entire tomato patch to them. Heirlooms typically have far less disease resistance than modern hybrids, making them vulnerable to early blight, late blight, fusarium wilt, verticillium wilt, and other common tomato diseases. In humid climates with heavy disease pressure, heirloom plants may be defoliated and unproductive, while hybrid neighbors continue producing. Many heirlooms also have lower yields than hybrids, producing fewer fruits per plant despite taking up equal space. The fruits themselves are often more prone to cracking, cat-facing, and other cosmetic issues. For gardeners who prize flavor above all else and accept the trade-offs, heirlooms remain worthwhile. For those seeking reliable, abundant harvests with minimal disease problems, dedicating some garden space to disease-resistant hybrids makes practical sense. The 12th crop that surprises people with its difficulty is asparagus for impatient gardeners. This perennial vegetable is absolutely worth growing for those willing to invest the time, but most gardeners underestimate the commitment required. Asparagus takes 3 years from planting crowns to produce a meaningful harvest, and during that establishment period, you must resist harvesting to allow plants to build strong root systems. The bed preparation is extensive, requiring deep digging and generous amendment with organic matter. Once established, asparagus beds need annual maintenance, including cutting back ferns after frost, topping with compost, and controlling persistent weeds that compete with the shallow-rooted crowns. Asparagus beds also occupy permanent garden space for 15 to 20 years or more, which may conflict with crop rotation plans or future garden redesigns. For gardeners who can commit to the long timeline and permanent space allocation, asparagus rewards patience with decades of delicious spring harvests. For those who want quicker gratification or frequently redesign their gardens, asparagus may not be the right choice. The 13th crop that rarely delivers good value is potatoes for gardeners with limited space. While potatoes are satisfying to grow and harvest, they require significant garden real estate to produce meaningful quantities. Each potato plant needs about 4 square feet when you account for hilling and requires 12 to 16 weeks of growing time. A 10-foot row might produce 20 to 30 pounds of potatoes under good conditions, which sounds impressive until you realize those same supermarket potatoes cost about 50 cents per pound. For the space, time, and effort invested, potatoes often represent poor returns compared to higher value crops. The exception is specialty varieties unavailable in stores. Purple, fingerling, and rare heritage potatoes can be worth growing for their unique flavors, colors, and textures. But if you are growing standard russets or reds that are identical to supermarket offerings, your garden space might serve you better with crops that command premium prices or are unavailable commercially. The 14th crop to approach cautiously is strawberries for gardeners unwilling to commit to proper maintenance. Strawberries seem like an ideal crop, producing sweet fruit from small spaces. The reality is more complicated. Strawberry plants require careful bed preparation, consistent watering, annual renovation, runner management, and vigilant pest control. Birds, slugs, earwigs, and various fungi constantly threaten the fruit. The plants themselves are short-lived perennials that decline in productivity after 3 or 4 years and must be replaced. June-bearing varieties produce all their fruit in a short window, requiring immediate processing or consumption. Ever-bearing and day-neutral types offer extended harvests but typically produce smaller berries in lesser quantities. After accounting for all the effort, your strawberry patch might produce a few quarts of berries worth perhaps $15 to $20 at farmers' market prices. Gardeners who love strawberries and enjoy the maintenance rituals can absolutely find value in growing them. Those expecting carefree, abundant harvests will likely be disappointed. The 15th and final crop that wastes many gardeners' time and money is any vegetable grown in conditions completely unsuitable for that plant. This seems obvious, but gardeners constantly attempt to grow heat-loving crops like tomatoes and peppers in deeply shaded locations, or plant cool season crops like lettuce and spinach in full southern exposure during midsummer. Every vegetable has specific requirements for sunlight, temperature, water, and soil conditions. Growing crops that are fundamentally mismatched to your garden conditions guarantees disappointing results regardless of how much effort, fertilizer, or wishful thinking you apply. Before planting anything, honestly evaluate your garden's conditions and choose crops appropriate for those realities. A garden filled with well-suited crops will always outperform one filled with struggling plants fighting against their environment. And now for the bonus tip gardeners swear by. Before each growing season, sit down and calculate the true cost of growing each crop you are considering. Factor in the cost of seeds or transplants, soil amendments, water, and most importantly, the value of your garden space and time. Compare that against what you would pay to buy that produce locally. Some crops like tomatoes, peppers, salad greens, and herbs almost always deliver excellent value because homegrown quality far exceeds store-bought and prices can be high for organic produce. Other crops like sweet corn, head lettuce, and celery rarely justify their garden footprint when considering opportunity cost. Being strategic about what you grow ensures your garden delivers maximum satisfaction and value every single season. Thanks for sticking with me through the entire video. If you found this helpful, do not forget to join our free newsletter. I share exclusive tips, seasonal planting guides, and advice that helps gardeners just like you grow more food with less stress. Click the link in the description to sign up. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and check out our other videos on growing a better garden.